Recently, President Biden issued a mass pardon of thousands of people convicted of federal marijuana possession. But the decree doesn't include those convicted of distribution, which the majority of offenders are doing serious time for. NBC6 reporter Ryan Nelson begins our look at the impact this executive order can have on our community and the country.
Criminal records for marijuana possession have led to needless barriers to employment, to housing, and educational opportunities.
Biden using this pen to wipe out these prior federal convictions for an estimated 6,500 people from 1992 to 2021 and thousands more who live in the District of Columbia.
Democrats are looking at tough elections in a few weeks.
NBC6 political analyst Carlos Curbelo says the move stands to rally the Democrats' base, but says it won't do much for the president's usual opponents.
This is an issue that Democrats think can galvanize, can motivate those young voters to go to the polls and say, look, the laws are changing in a way that we agree with. Obviously, very conservative voters won't agree with this decision.
Candidate Biden in 2020 promised to take action on marijuana convictions. The president and advocates say these convictions lead to real-world barriers and jobs and housing that have a greater impact on minority communities.
Black and brown people are arrested, prosecuted, and convicted at disproportionately higher rates.
The president is urging governors to grant similar pardons, something he can't do on his own, says criminal defense attorney David Weinstein.
What the president is doing is encouraging state officials to act in a similar fashion and commute those sentences.
The Biden administration is also reviewing whether marijuana should still be classified as a Schedule I drug like LSD and heroin.
And if the federal authorities take marijuana out of Schedule I, it will no longer be a federal offense to possess marijuana.
Ryan Nelson, NBC6 News.
Joining me now to talk more about the relevance of the pardon plan are two men who are on the front lines of the issue. Dr. Irva Damas, founder of Dr. Damas Wellness, and activist C.J. Staples of Dream Defenders. Welcome to the show this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
You got it. I've had both of you on talking about this issue for quite some time. So I want to get your take. Dr. Damas, to start with you, your take when the president came down with the pardon.
Well, first thing I thought was, let's go, Brandon, right? Just co-opting that term and using it positively, because it's something that the majority of U.S. citizens have been polling positively for a number of years. We're looking at somewhere between 70–80%, depending on the demographic and when you take the polling, that people want marijuana legalized. And then we look at some of the damage that's been done that's been well documented. So the first thing I thought about was, this is something we've all been clamoring for. It's a first step, but it hasn't opened the floodgates. There's much more work to do.
And I see C.J. shaking his head. Your thoughts, C.J.?
No, I completely agree. It's a good first step. It's a good conversation starter, right? The reason why we're here today. But it's absolutely not a silver bullet by any means, right? The White House even admitted that this pardon is not actually releasing anyone from prison because of these marijuana convictions. So obviously it's going to allow people to get jobs and housing, and that's an amazing benefit, but there does need to be more.
More needs to be done. Dr. Damas, I want to know, considering the effects of marijuana has on the body, so was it ever looped into the Schedule I category when fentanyl and cocaine are Schedule II narcotics? I want your thoughts on that.
Well, I think first thing we should explain to people is that the Schedules 1 through 5 dictate, basically, according to the U.S. government, the use or the addictive potential of the substances. So you go 1 through 5, 1 being the worst. That means that this substance has no medicinal or research value. So you're looking, as you mentioned, at LSD, you're looking at peyote, they put marijuana in there as well. And then, let's say, for example, Schedule 3, you can get things like testosterone, ketamine, those type of things. So when you're in Schedule 1, it pretty much eliminates the opportunity for there to be medical research or medical uses done on a federal level. So that's why we've had all these state initiatives going on since California kind of legalized it on the state level a long time ago. What it does to physicians like myself, for example, it stops us from being able to do research, to get grants and funding for research when it involves marijuana. It stops us from being able to incorporate it into our medicinal practices on a federal level. Insurance companies won't acknowledge it. The VA won't allow or pay for it. So it puts a lot of barriers and limitations to something which in other countries they've been able to do research, and they have a great amount of knowledge that's come out, a great amount of data that's really, really, really like enthusiastically kind of saying this is something that's good. We just haven't had the opportunity in the U.S.
So with that said, CJ, you touched on it a little bit. You talked about more needs to be done. Now, what more are you talking about that needs to be done?
I mean, I would say, first off, just completely deschedule it, marijuana. I mean, the data is there, like you said, on an international level. I mean, the DNA and the biology of an American is no different than a Swede or an Australian, right? So, what works for them, medicinally should work for us as well. So, yeah, completely descheduling it altogether, and being honest about why it was placed in that position in the first place, right? Because we can sit here and talk about, how good this can be for the country, how good this can be for just people in general around the medicinal properties. But we also need to talk about, why it was set in place in the first place and who it affects more than anyone else.
Yeah, we know who it affects more than anyone else. And Dr. Damas, so you're a marijuana-based wellness business, and even though 19 states have legalized recreational marijuana use and 38 states have provisions for medicinal use, it is still not federally recognized, making building business a challenge. So I want to know your thoughts on that, and do you see maybe federally it just basically being wiped out as a federally where it's legally used, especially recreationally as well, because we keep on talking about medicinal use, but recreationally as well, because they'll make things a little bit more simple.
Well, one of the things we like to say in the industry, instead of using the word recreational, we like to use the term adult use, so that we kind of really put parameters on what we're trying to do, which kind of fights against some of the prohibitionists' terms and tactics. This is a gateway drug and kids are going to abuse it. So we like to use adult use as the term as opposed to recreational. When it comes to the business of cannabis, it's really been a very dysfunctional space. It's been one that's been ripe with exploitation. It's been exclusionary as it pertains to minorities and people of color. Opportunities for funding are very sparse in between. So you'll have a lot of the challenges that peoples in community of color, the communities that have been disproportionately affected by these prohibitionist policies, have not been able to participate in it. Right? And so, from banking, a number of things, credit card processing. And so if you're not well-heeled, or well-funded, it's hard for our community and communities and people of color to get involved in some of the financial windfalls that are taking place. As a physician, I have an issue with our communities not participating on the medical side of it as well because of the stigma, and because a lot of these multi-state operators who are dispensaries that kind of like go from state to state, take advantage of the laws or help draft the laws, they don't really see our community as a place to get involved. So we're continuing to be excluded from the industry on both levels, the financial aspect and the medicinal aspect. And there's a multi-billion-dollar industry taking off and millions of people across the country getting benefits, and we're on the margins of it. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And as we said, if we did have federal descheduling altogether, we would have more of even footing, so we would just have to deal with some of the things that we inherently have challenges with, which are financing and those type of things, but we wouldn't have some of the other things where laws are kind of made to have loopholes and hoops that you jump through that we ain't gonna make happen.
Well, let's talk, CJ, let's talk about decriminalization versus legalization.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, I believe that decriminalization obviously is a great first step, right? That obviously takes away the fear of even just possessing marijuana, right? But then you get into the legalization of it. You get the government and regulation and like you said, all the different loopholes, right? Like there's certain states where you have to have been growing for a certain amount of years before you can even open up a dispensary, and most people in these marginalized communities, we're not growing, right? They get their supply from someone else. So yeah, I mean, complete legalization will open up the floodgates and allow for a lot of people who are currently making money in the backdoor alleys of the marijuana trade to make a legitimate business for themselves. And that, you know, obviously there are people in this country who would not want that to happen. So again, we just got to be honest, have honest conversations.
Okay, last question. Make it fast. I'm running out of time. What's the bottom line?
Bottom line is we still have a lot of work to do. I do believe the governors are the next thing. Personally, from the medicinal side, we need to look at the scheduling of the drug. We need to have access to funds, grants, ability to research, to put some science, some data behind some of the claims that we have, and have a safe, operating, equitable environment for citizens of the U.S. who overwhelmingly want this.
All right, well, I just ran out of time, so unfortunately I have to wrap. But I want to thank you both, and I'm sure this is not the last discussion we're going to have. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
You got it.